The sun had begun its downward slope on the evening of June 4th, 1965, as President Lyndon Johnson mounted the podium on the main quadrangle of Howard University, the country's most celebrated black center of higher education. The temporary platform erected for the graduation ceremony stood directly in front of Frederick Douglass Memorial Hall, named for the escaped slave who had become the 19th century's most important abolitionist and had served as a trustee at Howard. Dressed in academic robes, draped in the hood of the honorary degree of Doctor of Laws he had just received, the president turned to face an audience of some 5,000 mostly African-American students, parents, and family who had been sitting expectantly in the main quadrangle. Reading in the unhurried manner characteristic of his native Texas, Johnston got underway by saluting the university's president. "Dr. Nabrit, my fellow Americans." Then he opened his leather-bound text and began. "I am delighted at the chance to speak at this important and this historic institution. Truly a working example of democratic excellence." At the finish, President Johnson was greeted with applause more rapturous than even a president elected by a landslide 7 months earlier might have expected. This, however, was no common occasion. This was no ordinary American leader, and to fulfill these rights was no run-of-the-mill speech. With the country still confronting Southern resistance, this noteworthy address rightly is recalled as the first moment when a president from any region forcefully and visibly sponsored affirmative action for blacks. But the speech also should be remembered for how it highlighted a powerful historical question it did not adequately answer. Why did the disparity between white and black Americans widen after the Second World War despite the country's prosperity? The answers Lyndon Johnson offered were less compelling than his discussion about what to do once legal segregation had ended and voting rights had been secured. The missing words that balmy evening might well have attended to the history of affirmative action for whites. Had the president done so, his inspiriting but rather open-ended conclusions might have placed affirmative action for blacks on a different, arguably more secure, foundation. June 1965 was no ordinary month. Nearly a year earlier, Congress had passed the Civil Rights Act at the start of July. With segregation in public accommodations now forbidden and discrimination in employment proscribed, the mass civil rights movement turned to voting rights.